How about a review of a niche firearm, the Rex 01S, the kind of forgotten firearm of the industry that had a big introduction 6 or 7 years ago and had so much promise in the market based on all the reviewers that were either paid or, kind of bought off, by the company to kind of give it a good introduction, which, whatever, that's their job, but they screwed a lot of things up. And the first thing I would say that they screwed up was calling it a SIG clone when it actually wasn't. It's a CZ99, it's a reverse engineered CZ99, or 999, however you guys want to see it. But this does not have very much in common with a SIG. It has some things in general in common, but I mean, you look under the hood and you're like, yeah, that's not really a SIG. Cosmetically, it kind of does look like one, but just like the CZ99, that's where it ends. So, with that said, it's reverse engineered. There's a lot of differences. Just look it up. The action of this piece right here, this lever, that's Walther P88, which, the CZ99 took. This is a reverse engineered CZ99, because guess what? Whammy. There is no decocker and, no slide stop decocker on this side. But there is a manual safety. That's not on the P99, that's not on the SIG, that's not on Walther P88. That is a Slovenian idea from making this pistol. So, no, it is not a direct CZ or SIG clone. It is a CZ99 reverse engineered to fit the Slovenian needs. So, with that said, just wanted to get that out of the way first. So, I'm sure that anybody watching this video has seen a slew of 6 or 7 year old videos raving about this pistol and how it performs, what it has, and all that other goofy stuff. It really hasn't changed much. I've just seen from some of the original videos that the texturing right here has kind of changed a little bit to this, but the 01, it is what it is. They have the latest one, the 02, which has an improved trigger reach. The grip isn't as fat, at least it's not as thick this way. And the slide serrations are a little bit better. It apparently feels more refined from the people who have shot it. It hasn't had a big release into the market because, frankly, the pistol was kind of dead on arrival once it got released. The 02S, that is. Because people just weren't interested in it. I mean, people aren't really buying Berettas as much. They're not buying the classic SIGs as much. I mean, they just sit on shelves and they go on clearance. And I get them for, like, hundreds of dollars less than what they originally go for, because everybody's wanting the newest, latest, greatest in designs or whatever, and that's fine. But there are some of us out here that still value, these kinds of pistols, even though they don't have as much support. So this video is more about my experiences with this pistol, because you can get all other information, elsewhere. So let's go ahead and start from the top. Let's talk about the sights. So the sights, they were small, and I'm sure you can find a video with, the original white dot sights. Well, I just colored the entire front sight pink, fluorescent pink, to catch the eye in all environments, and I blacked out the rears. These sights are tiny. For a full-size handgun, these sights are really tiny to pick up. They're really hard to pick up, too, so that's one of the reasons why I colored it in, because I have land, I go out in the woods, and I shoot. So that's my primary environment that I'll train in. So yeah, when it comes to sights, at least it has a shelf that you can rack stuff on, but again, it's small, so you really got to press the handgun into whatever you're going to rack it off of before you charge. And this recoil spring is pretty strong, so racking this, it's actually one of the most difficult ones to rack, was at least when you first get it. That was my experience anyways. It definitely needed a break-in period, which I'm fine with, because I like springs that last a long time, and they definitely do, even though it's a single coil. So, slide serrations. The slide serrations could definitely use some help, but the edges, if you keep them clean, which I haven't really kept them all that clean, you can see all the gunk and stuff like that from using the slide serrations, but I mean, if you keep them clean, they do give a good purchase, and it's not that difficult to manipulate. But it could have used improvements. I think the best slide serrations out of the box are on the Smith & Wesson M&P. I just like that feeling, that texture. So let's let's go ahead and move on to the controls. Again, I already talked about the CZ99 relation, but when I first got this pistol, this slide stop was very hard to use. Even when the gun was empty, for whatever reason, it would just catch right here, and it would hold on for dear life. I think that it was a combination of the recoil spring tension and how, unused it was. The finish, it was just kind of bonding to it. Like, it felt fused sometimes. So it was just really, it was interesting to break it in. Let's just say that, because there were some times when I would try to insert the loaded mag and then go down, hit, oh, I can't pull it down. Nowadays, it's really simple, even with a magazine inserted, to pull the lever down with the support thumb and decock it. So it just takes a little bit of time to break in. Do I feel like they ripped us off by not having it like the CZ99? No. That's probably why they took it out anyways, because most people are right-handed shooters, so they're like, they'll learn to live with it. Now, when it comes to the manual safety, obviously that's ambidextrous. I have only used it a couple times in a holster to try to kind of see, could the cock and clock version work? Because everybody claims that it does in reviews, and I would say no, not really. I'm not really sold on the idea of using it in cock and lock. Number one, look how high that is. So, and look how far back it is from the thumb. So when you're grabbing the gun out of the holster, it's going to be something like this, especially if it has any kind of retention mechanism. The retention mechanism on the Omnivore, which is the only holster that I have that is duty related that can fit this gun, it requires to push in. And then when you get it out, you got to come back up, and then you got to swipe it down. Now, you can easily swipe it down, but it's just not very secure, especially if you have gloves on. So I have failed to be able to get it on the first go with gloves. So it's kind of hokey, as Nothing Fancy would say back in the day. But that's my feelings on the Rex Zero 1 controls. So, I guess, or these top controls. So the magazine release, I usually use my middle finger on my shooting hand to release the magazine. And it's pretty simple now to release it, but this left side, when I first got it, I was actually trying to push in the left side. It had to be completely flush, and it still kind of does have to be completely flush before it will actually go. And that doesn't seem like a lot of travel, but it actually kind of is, because the wall of the grip here, in order to be completely flush, you're kind of really having to get on top of it, so you do have to readjust your grip a bit. You can't just... Sometimes I would come over with my middle finger and come under and push, just like so. And that's not going to work with gloves, so typically I just take it out and hit it just like that. Don't have to move my grip or anything, and that's it. So, that's pretty much it for the controls. Now, the trigger. So, the trigger, when I first got it, pretty darn heavy, and it's actually one of my favorite triggers because it's heavy right away, but then as you pull through that, it actually just smooths out. So it's like it holds right in this position, and then once you break through that, it's nice and smooth, and it just breaks really easily. It's one of my favorite triggers to work with and train on, rather, because you got to get through that initial pull and then control it all the way back. So the single action, it's incredibly gentle nowadays. The hammer spring is still pretty stiff, but I mean, there's really nothing to it. I mean, there's a little bit of over travel, but you don't notice it when shooting. I don't know why people get really trigger snobby. It's like they think they have time for it, but I would say that I'm more of a combat shooter, so I'm not sitting there and trying to feel up the guns or whatever. I just want the thing to work when I demand it, so I take it out and I try to shoot it fast and accurately, because you have to have both. You can't prioritize accuracy over speed, and really that's distance dependent, but try to combine both. And I've never noticed this gun to be a problem in double action or single action right out of the box. Right out of the box, I was very impressed with its shootability, even with that heavy double action that I was definitely unaccustomed to. It's just a little bit of a different feel. So kind of get into that a little bit more. When you're pulling, you're right here and pulling, and then now it starts smoothing out a little bit for the pull through. And you see it doesn't go all the way back. There's still a little bit of room here, and that's as far as the trigger is going to travel. And then of course you got that little bit of unlock where it just like a SIG, it has to go back up like maybe a couple millimeters, and then you can cock the hammer on a dry run, and then there you get your reset right there, and then you got only this much movement, and then it goes again. Almost no over travel. So it's actually a very easy trigger to shoot well. I've gotten nothing but positive feedback from people who have used this gun. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the grip. The grip, pretty fat. Bit of a reach for the trigger. With gloved hands I'm still able to do it, but thank goodness the trigger is worn in a bit, and it is a bit lighter than it used to be, because this is pretty thick. And that was one of the complaints about the CZ99 and the P88. So, you know, they tried to upgrade this with the 02S, which I don't have any experience with, so I can't speak to it. But I would say that getting a machinist to come in here and actually stipple this with, you know, actual good, I don't know, maybe some raised pyramids or whatever, would be good for the grip, and just take a little bit off the top here and all the way up, and then just refinish it maybe. And then of course here, kind of like how the M9A1 kind of took the M9, which was like this on the grip, how it just had these vertical serrations or whatever, or vertical cuts, and they just went across and gave it texture all the way, and that actually changed the dynamics of the M9 or the M9A1 in comparison, and made it feel like a different gun. So anyways, that's pretty much it. I mean, shooting this gun, it handles 9mm like a joke. It definitely doesn't behave like a SIG. With a SIG, you can actually feel the slide moving up and down and flipping. It's definitely not like a SIG. It is heavy all around. It's not so heavy to where I wouldn't feel comfortable carrying it. It's just heavy in the sense that, you know, the slide weighs about as much as the frame. And I don't really have a problem with that. I actually like the balance that it actually has. And, you know, to me, it's better than a SIG. It's just kind of sad that it didn't really take off. I just feel that the company kind of died out because it just came in when people weren't really appreciating that, and it just, I don't know. Maybe they're making enough sales to last a little bit longer, but I guess we'll just have to kind of see what the future holds for it. But anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below.